Peace and blessings. Welcome back to the channel once again, where we talk all things health and healing from a holistic perspective, and today will be no different. Today we're going to talk about how your root canal could be the root of your other diseases. Okay, now this is a hugely important conversation because a lot of people have root canals. As a matter of fact, in the US alone, every year 25 million people get root canals, and that's just in the US. Okay. Now, what's also important to understand is at some point you could be given the option to get a root canal, and you may think that that's your only option. So you need to be properly informed. Okay. And the other reason why it's so important is because a lot of other diseases or diseases are being caused by that root canal. Okay. And a lot of people don't make that connection. Now, I had the opportunity to do training and learning holistic medicine in all different ways, Ayurvedic medicine, natural herbal medicine in Africa, even Balinese medicine in Indonesia, in Bali. But I also got an opportunity to learn a little bit about traditional Chinese medicine. And one of the things they teach in traditional Chinese medicine is how all of the teeth in the mouth are connected to certain organs, okay? And how the teeth have certain meridians in the body. And whenever a tooth goes bad, it will create dis-ease other places in the body, okay? So we're gonna get into that so you can sort of understand. As a matter of fact, when you start to look around the world at how people who are in the holistic space, shamans, holistic doctors, and other places of the world, what they have in common is that they understand that our bodies are intimately connected. You can look at somebody's face and tell what's going on with them. You can look in somebody's eyes and tell what's going on with them. That's called iridology, okay? But you also can look at people's teeth as well too, okay? And see what's going on as well too. And a lot of things that are happening today, when you think about dentistry and our overall oral health, it has shifted so much because of what we eat today, okay? As opposed to what we ate 100 years ago, most of what we ate had a lot of fiber in it. It was natural. It wasn't processed, okay? So what you'll notice is that the jawbone structures of our ancestors are stronger, are wider, okay? And you'll notice that a lot of our ancestors would have all of their teeth, okay? And we'll get into that in just a second as well, too. All right. And so it's hugely important to understand that, unfortunately, a lot of dentists and also physicians don't fully understand the consequences of getting a root canal and its subsequent toxicity to the body. And that's what I'm going to be explaining to you today, so that you'll understand if you are presented with getting a root canal, or if you have had a root canal. And some people have had dental work and they don't even know that they had it, okay? If your mom or your dad or your sister got a root canal and they have this issue that no matter what they do, they change their diet, they start to exercise, they start to meditate, they do all these things and nothing changed, it could be the root canal, okay? So before we start, let me give you a little bit of anatomy understanding of the tooth, okay? When you look at the tooth, that hard covering on the outside is an enamel, okay? All right, right below that is a sort of a porous, layer that's called dentin. Now, in this dentin, you have all of these tubules, okay? Just very, very porous. And these tubules, if you were to lay them out, they're about 3 to 5 miles in length, okay? Now, the reason why I'm bringing that up is because you need to understand that the tooth is porous, all right? Not only is it porous, but it's fluid filled. Porous meaning little canals on the inside of the teeth, okay? That could stretch up to 3 to 5 miles, okay? But those canals, those tubules are fluid filled, okay? Now, under that layer, the dentin layer, you're gonna have what's called the pulp. Now, this is the cavity of the tooth where you're gonna have the nerve, you're gonna have the root, you're gonna have the blood supply coming in the lymphatic system. Now, the reason why that's so important is because you got to get blood to the teeth because the teeth have to be nourished. Okay, hugely important. The same way tissues in our heart and our feet and our hair and our scalp and our eyes have to be nourished, so they have to have blood supply. Our teeth have to have that too. Okay, the same way we have to have nerve endings in our our spine and all the rest of our bodies. Okay, we have to have that in our teeth. And we also have to have our lymphatic system there as well too, because our lymphatic system is not only important from the standpoint of removing waste. Okay, now just think about it. If you're going to collect waste, where are you going to collect the most amount of waste? Okay, in the gut, but definitely in the mouth, because that's where everything starts at, in the mouth. Okay, so it's hugely important to have our lymphatic system there as well too. Now, here's the unfortunate consequence of a root canal. Your dentist is going to drill through that enamel, through that dentin, and into the pulp of the teeth. And the whole sort of point is to remove the root, remove the blood supply, the blood vessels, and portions of that lymphatic system as well too. All right, now let me tell you why that's problematic. There are nerves there that are visible, but then there are also microscopic nerves that aren't visible, okay? All right, so if you were to ask your dentist, is this procedure 100% certain that all of the nerve in the root will be removed? They would emphatically tell you no, because they know that it's impossible to be able to remove that because things are microscopic and you will not be able to remove them, okay? Now, the reason why that's so problematic, not removing all of the tissue, is because when you don't remove all of the tissue will die when it's not provided with nourishment because the blood vessels are removed, okay? As tissue begins to die and become necrotic, that is going to attract bacteria. Now you got to think, this is our mouth. All right. So because of that, bacteria is going to be there. I mean, we have a microbiome in our gut, but we also have oral microbiome in our mouth as well too. So it's going to that dead tissue is going to start to attract bad bacteria. Okay. As it's attracting that bad bacteria, and when I say bad bacteria, specifically anaerobic bacteria, okay? This is acidic bacteria. This is bacteria that doesn't need oxygen, all right? That is what's gonna cause even more tooth decay and breakdown as well too, okay? Because after they drill down and get what they can out, they're gonna then plug it up, okay? But now there's no blood supply going to it. There's no nerve there. Okay, there's no nerve there, but there are microscopic nerves left behind because they've removed what they could see. Okay, so now that bacteria is building up inside of the pulp, that cavity of the tooth. Now our teeth are anchored into our bones by ligaments. Okay, not anchored directly into the bone, but anchored by those ligaments. They don't remove the ligaments, so guess what? That bacteria is going to attach also and attack. Is going to attack those ligaments as well too. This is all that's happening. Now, what's also important is your lymphatic system also is responsible for delivering parts of the immune system, okay? So lymphatic cells, things that fight off infection, but now you've cut that off. So now the immune system can't get there as well too to fight the bacteria. This is when it becomes problematic. Because now the tooth is not only getting more and more infected, but it's also going to get into the adjacent teeth as well too, and possibly get into that blood supply as well too, get into the systemic blood supply, and this is where it starts to cause all kind of chronic issues that we are trying to figure out. Why is our blood pressure so high? Why do I have arthritis? And it all could be traced back to a root canal. Okay, now let me give you a few causes of why you could possibly get a root canal. Now, the first couple are going to be things that you can control. So your diet. A poor diet is probably one of the #1 reasons why people end up having a root canal. Okay, if you eat a very acidic diet, okay, and an acidic diet is consuming lots of refined carbohydrates, a lot of sugar, okay, also consuming acidic and sugary beverages. And when you think about the standard American diet, it's plump full of processed foods that are loaded with not only food chemicals, but tons of sugars and tons of acidic things that are going into the mouth every day, 3 times a day. Okay, so a poor diet is one of the #1 causes. Poor dental hygiene or oral hygiene as well too. Not brushing and flossing when you need to. Flossing, I always tell people, when you don't floss your teeth, it's the equivalent of having a bowel movement and just wiping your cheeks and not between your cheeks. Okay? The dirty stuff is between the cheeks. So if you don't floss, then you're just leaving a cesspool for bacteria to grow and flourish. Okay? So not to be too graphic, but it is what it is. When you don't floss, get the things that are between your teeth. It's literally like just wiping your butt cheeks, not between your butt cheeks. All right. Also, not getting cleanings. Okay. If you're going to eat the standard American diet, you're going to need to get your teeth clean and regularly too. And I'll tell you, how often you get them clean will depend on you and your lifestyle. So that's going to be different for everybody. Also, when people don't do things like preventative things like oil pulling as well too. So these are things that are part of the oral hygiene care that a lot of people aren't doing. Okay, they're just brushing their teeth, not flossing. Some people aren't even brushing after every meal, etc. So a lot of these things could help, but when you don't do them, it can lead to a root canal because it can lead to breakdown of the teeth because the diet is so acidic, and then ultimately lead to a root canal or needing a root canal. All right. The other thing is poor oral microbiome. As I said before, the same way we have a microbiome in our gut, we also have a microbiome in our mouth as well too. And poor diet and poor oral hygiene lead to a poor or unhealthy microbiome. All right. The other thing is if you have the unfortunate habit of clenching and grinding your teeth, and that ultimately, in many cases, is due to either how your jaw is structured. So a lot of people have narrow jaws now. That also could be due to how your teeth are aligned as well too. Because if you have a misalignment, that'll cause you to kind of clench as well too. So that's something that could be adjusted. It also could be due to a deficiency. So a vitamin D deficiency, a vitamin B5 deficiency as well too. But a deficiency could cause you to clench and grind your teeth. And ultimately what this is going to do is cause you to wear out the enamel on your tooth and eventually lead to micro tears and cracks in your tooth, which could lead to bacteria getting into those cracks, which could lead to an infection and decay. Okay. And another thing that leads to potential root canal is injury. So getting some sort of blunt force trauma to your tooth and it cracking. Okay. So those are the potential causes. So let's get into, I'm going to explain a little bit of the history because I'm not the first one to come up with this idea. This is a very, very ancient idea in terms of like dentistry, in terms of like understanding that root canals can be dangerous. So you can go back to the early 1900s with Dr. Weston A. Price, okay, who was a well-known and renowned dentist who spoke around the world about dentistry and how to protect your teeth and how the teeth are connected to a lot of disease. And so he actually did a lot of research, and he did research with the Mayo Clinic back in the 1910s and 1920s. Okay, so he did 25 years of research, and he found some very interesting things, which is sort of very ironic that you would discover something 25 years ago in conjunction with a clinic like Mayo Clinic, who is one of the more well-known and renowned clinics even today. And the information that he came out with back then in the 1910s and 1920s, and dentists don't know this or accept it. But again, that's another situation, okay? But some of the things that he discovered is that when you do a root canal, the bacteria remains in the pulp of the tooth, okay? It doesn't matter how much you get out because you can't get all of it out. As I said before, many of the things that you need to get out to make sure that bacteria doesn't form, they're microscopic. So they're not visible to the eye and they're very difficult to see under a microscope. And how could you put your mouth under a microscope? And so bacteria is going to remain. As a matter of fact, after doing 25 years of research, Dr. Weston A. Price, no relation, believed that it was impossible to properly sterilize the root because it shrinks, and then these anaerobic bacteria get into the tubules that I mentioned before, so it's impossible to get them out. Okay, so even if you were to get all of the root out, you're not going to get all of the bacteria that has been created out. That's going to be in those little microtubules inside of that sort of dentin layer of the tooth. Okay, so that's hugely important. The other really huge discovery that he came up with was he started noticing that after doing root canals, a lot of his patients would develop these chronic conditions, everything from arthritis to diabetes to even heart disease. Okay, and as he started to notice that these symptoms would develop very shortly after having a root canal, it made him want to do a little bit of research. And so this is the 25 years of research that I spoke of. And so some of the things that he discovered when doing this research was that he would have patients come in with diabetes, arthritis, again, heart disease, okay? And so specifically, a woman came in with crippling arthritis. He removed the root canal tooth. So you know what happens after you get the root removed from the tooth. Again, they put a composite in the hole that they drilled in the tooth to remove the root and the blood vessels and it's set in the nerve. And then you just have that dead tooth there. Okay. The reason why I call it's a dead tooth because it looks like it's alive on the outside, but on the inside of the tooth it's dead. And the tooth itself, our teeth are living. Okay. It's living tissue. It's not just these hard pieces of enamel or bone. They're living tissues. So this is why I'm saying it's necrotic, okay? It's dead, and we'll come back to that. But what he discovered after removing the root canal tooth was that the symptoms would resolve, the chronic conditions would resolve. So if this lady in particular who had crippling arthritis, once the tooth was removed, the arthritis went away. So after seeing that, what he decided to do was to see if it was connected. He took that very same tooth, that very same root canal tooth, and he put it under the skin of a rabbit, okay? And guess what? The rabbit developed the same condition. Not only did the rabbit develop the same arthritic condition, the rabbit died very shortly as well. And so he started doing this with multiple animals. Taking out the root canal tooth from somebody who had heart disease, putting in an animal, guess what? They will develop the same condition. He did this over and over for 25 years, resolving the patient's condition and ultimately proving that it was the tooth, the bacteria, that was ultimately leading to the chronic condition. Now, of course, like today we would be in an uproar because, killing animals that way. But I think it's important to know and understand that he established the connection. This is in the 1910s and 1920s, okay? And so going back to what I mentioned before, and I think this is also important, is that a root canal tooth, once you remove the root, it is a necrotic tissue. It is dead tissue. There's in medical science, there's no other tissue that when it dies, we leave it in the body, okay? So if you, for instance, you get your appendix, okay? We always take that out. If you have one of your kidneys fail, we don't just leave it in there and say, hey, well, the other one's working, so you'll be good. We have to take it out. Same thing with a gangrene. So let's say one of your toes had gangrene. They would remove the toe. They would not keep it on there because the gangrene would spread. Okay, same thing with a mother when she delivers a baby. They don't take the placenta or the umbilical cord and say, all right, well, maybe you can use that and stuff it back in the mom. Okay, because it becomes dead tissue, which could create the same situation in the tooth and the body. So this is the only way, this is the only other place in the medical arena that we do this. I think what's also important about Dr. Weston Price's work is that he went around the world also visiting tribes that were away from society, not eating any westernized food, eating from the land, et cetera, et cetera. And what he noticed was these tribes, they had perfect teeth, no gum disease, and they barely brushed their teeth. Okay, but as soon as these tribes started incorporating Western foods into their diets, not only did their teeth get horrible, but they started to develop the same chronic conditions that we're affected with today. Okay, so hugely important to understand that. All right, the other thing that's really important is that a root canal tooth, again, removes the nerve, it cuts off the blood supply, the lymph, and it also is essentially leaving dead tissue inside of the tooth, okay? And it's removing the lymphatic system, as I said before, okay? So when you do that, just understand that you're leaving something dead in the body, something necrotic in the body. Now, you're probably asking yourself, all right, Dr. Price, so what are my options at this point? Okay, and again, look at this from the standpoint of if you have a root canal or if you're presented with the option that you injured your tooth or your tooth became decayed or whatever it may be, and the doctor says, I want to do a root canal, okay? If it were me, I would get it extracted, meaning removed, okay? Again, me personally, I would get it removed, okay? The option from there is to get a partial, okay? A partial tooth in there, which is probably the most economical option other than just leaving it missing. And then the next option that is a little bit more expensive is going to be a bridge, okay? And then the next option, which is probably by far the most expensive, is going to be an implant. Now, if you're going to get an implant, do not get titanium. They have shown some negative effects in the body, especially when it comes to negative electrical effects in the body. Okay, so if you're going to get an implant, one of the best sort of options to use is zirconium. Okay, all right. So if you're going to use that option, so I'll say this: if you're going to do this, don't use a regular dentist. Okay, you want to find a holistic or biologic dentist. And the reason why that's so important is because you can do even more damage by improperly removing it. And in most cases, because a lot of regular dentists are not up to speed on a lot of the things that need to be done to prevent the situation from getting worse, then it ends up getting worse instead of better. So I wouldn't use a regular dentist. I would find a holistic dentist or a biologic dentist, and you can go to IAOMT.org to find a holistic or biologic dentist, okay? Because what they're gonna do is they're probably gonna spray the cavity of the tooth with some ozone therapy, which is something that you're not gonna see a typical dentist do. But they're also gonna do a cavitation surgery as well too, which means that they probably not only need to remove the tooth, but they probably need to remove a small piece of the bone as well too, because that's probably become infected as well. And if you don't need that part, again, the infection is probably gonna, in the bone, is probably gonna still cause you the issue. Okay, so I would definitely use a holistic or biologic dentist if I'm gonna do this. The other thing that I recommend is if right now isn't a great time for you to do that, increasing vitamin C. So increasing the foods that are high in vitamin C. One of my favorites is Barbados cherries or acerola cherries. They have one of the highest concentrations of vitamin C. Camel, incorporating more foods with antioxidants like black and blueberries that also have anthocyanins as well too. Keeping your gut healthy, because 70 to 80% of your immune system is developed in your gut. So that's going to be really helpful. And get educated in the meantime. I mentioned a book earlier, Dr. Thomas Levy's Hidden Epidemic. But also there's another book. It may still be available, but you know, books like this, they've taken them out of circulation. The Root Canal Cover Up as well too is a good book. And reading any books that Dr. Weston A. Price has also put out as well too. And consider this man was alive 100 years ago doing research. So good luck to you on your journey. Just know that your teeth, your body, and everything is intimately connected. Nothing is separate. And so I think that this will help a lot of people who are doing what they need to do. They've changed their diet. They've started to exercise. They're properly hydrating, and they're still not seeing results. And it could be possibly rooted back to your root canal. So make sure you share this video, hit the subscribe button, and until the next time, peace and blessings and Godspeed.